Chapter 10, Gospel Swamp. Originally, except for the Huntington Beach Mesa, the coastal area extending from the Newport Mesa to the Bolsa Chica Mesa and back into the country as far as Bolsa, a distance of about 7.5 miles, was considered a practically worthless swamp. This area, of about 30 square miles, 8,000 acres, was so full of peat springs and artesian wells, which flowed the year around, that it was quite inaccessible. It had a growth of willows, sycamores, tules, water moodies, wild blackberry, and other vines, grasses, and shrubs that made an almost impenetrable thicket. Only cows made trails as they worked their way around and through the tules to graze on open patches of salt grass. The free use of this land and the abundance of fine water, shade, and wood made it a cool, pleasant, and unmolested camping ground for religious organizations to hold vacations and protracted revival meetings. From this, it was called Gospel Swamp. Many strange things used to happen in the old Gospel Swamp. Besides being a refuge for wild ducks, geese, and birds, it housed many wildcats, coons, wild hogs, coyotes, badgers, and even black diamond rattlesnakes, which usually floated in on the floodwaters. Rattlesnakes do not infest swamplands. The hills and high dry lands are their natural habitat. Once, while I was looking for some stock at the driest time of the year, I walked near a large bunch of tules about 20 feet high. Hearing a very loud splashing and rattling, I thought a cow had bogged down. I parted the tules. In the center was a round, slick hole about 30 feet in diameter, filled with hundreds of snakes. They scattered in every direction. I always wondered what became of them, as we never saw snakes around this place again. A 2-year-old heifer had become wedged in a narrow ditch cut for the drainage of some peat springs. I found her chilled, nervous, and pretty far gone. I dug out the mud from around her shoulders and snaked her out by hooking a team of horses to her horns and dragging her to the bank. Delirious and glassy-eyed, she staggered around for a few moments, then made a huge lunge at me. Luckily, she was so weak that I could dodge her. The expression on this cow's face was one that I have seen in my later years on the faces of a few men, after they had been pulled out of the mire and helped to a stable business basis. They felt their independence, tried to upset their benefactor, and knock the props out from under him. The swamp was a more perfect haven for fugitives from justice, as they had the advantage of seeing and hearing the approaching officers first. Only one trail led into their hideouts, and the noise of slushing through mud, water, and tules announced a visitor in plenty of time to prepare a reception with all available firearms or to escape. One of the most interesting of these outlaws will be remembered by Bill Jones, Vern Brown, and many others. His name was Barney Fish. Tall, well-built, straight as an arrow, handsome with large black eyes and black hair, he dodged the officers and hid out in Gospel Swamp, where he had built himself an island camp. He was a wonderful musician, particularly a violinist, for he had been the leading violinist with the Orpheum Circuit, which covered the United States. He could play any piece forward or backward, by ear or by note. He could play his violin wrong side to, upside down, and behind his back. One of his most beautiful numbers was Listen to the Mockingbird, played in front of the bridge of the violin. Such a handsome entertainer was soon in great demand, and Barney Fish was easily the most popular man that ever hit the swamp. Barney Fish taught many boys to play the guitar and violin. Sometimes the boys would go to his tool hut to hear him play. One night, after a violin number, a baby cried lustily out in the tules. All excitedly ran out into the darkness to search and search, but to find nothing. They returned to shelter. The cry came again, then the sounds of running water, of beer from a keg, of marvelously beautiful bells. The boys learned for the first time that Barney Fish was an expert ventriloquist. He trained an orchestra that played for the old-time barn dances at Wardlow's, Lamb's, Bouchard's, Sam Talbert's, and Scott's. When the Talbert Volunteers for the Spanish-American War, 1898, left for the San Francisco training camp, Barney played in front of Talbert's store. In Santa Ana, he and his orchestra, riding in a high-spring wagon, played down 4th Street and at the depot where the Orange County Volunteers boarded their train. Barney's fear now left him. He felt safe from the law and grew brave. He was ready to take his place in the world again. He then went away and lived in Northern California.